In this lesson, we will learn how to bake animation in 3ds Max. When we bake or collapse an animation, we convert it to keyframes. Now, what does that mean? Well, sometimes we want a dynamically driven animation to be converted to keyframes so that we can customize the result. Or perhaps we're working on a cycle, and we know that with a cycle, well, eventually the system takes over. No longer do we have keyframes that are causing our animation to cycle. Instead, we're using a certain tool in 3ds Max to keep the animation going. But thankfully, we can go ahead and convert that movement down to keyframes so we can start to modify it. We could also have it stop at a certain time. And that's what we'll do in this lesson. So let's go ahead and start with our aircraft. With that selected, underneath our motion panel, we'll go to trajectories. And here's where we get to set our range. So here's our start and end, and how many keys we'd like in between this range. And then underneath, at the very bottom, this is where we get to choose what we collapse down. So notice we are able to collapse position, rotation, and scale. All right, sweet. So let's go ahead and collapse this to about frame 140. So I'll make sure the start time is at 1. Our end time we'll set to 140. And how many keys do we want in this range? Well, let's go ahead and put in that same amount of 140. All right, sweet. So from here, we can go ahead and choose what we'd like to collapse, position, and rotation. This looks good. So what this is saying is that in this range, we're going to have 140 keys. Now, why would we want this many keys? Well, simply because we want the animation to be preserved. So we'll go ahead and make sure that each frame will receive a key. Now, let's go ahead and click on collapse and take a look. You'll see that the animation will continue until frame 140, and then it will stop. There it goes, and then it stops. Fantastic. All right, sweet. So from here, we can now go ahead and take a look at how we would handle our fans that are being driven by a cycle. Now, if they were tied to our transforms, so position and rotation, well, we could actually go ahead and use the collapse tool if we wanted. So if our aircraft here was cycled, we could still use collapse. But in this case, let's go ahead and take a look at yet another way we can do this. We'll right-click and choose the curve editor, and let's focus on our two fan parameters. There's fan swivel left and fan swivel right. Now keep in mind, I went ahead and offset the keys of the left swivel from the right swivel. So you'll see that the left swivel is actually offset by 3 frames to delay the timing a bit. And that's so that we can create a natural looking offset so that they don't move at the same time, because that's known as twinning, and that can really start to harm our work. And to do so, it's really simple. It'd be a matter of grabbing the keys that we would like to change, and then we could head over to our frame field at the top, our key stats, and we could go ahead and type in our simple expression, n plus 3. When we hit enter, take a look. All of these keys have shifted over 3 frames. So just go ahead and undo that back. Just wanted to show you. And press Control Z. All right, fantastic. So how can we go ahead and essentially convert these to keyframes, the cycled animation? Well, we could always head over to our edit menu with the 2 tracks selected, and we'll choose Track View Utilities. All right, from here, we'll choose Create Out of Range Keys. Let's go ahead and click OK. And now we get to choose how many keys we create before our first key and after our last key, and then how many keys we'd like within that range. All right, so for before, let's go ahead and set that to 0 because we don't want any keys before our first key. And after, thinking about the length of our loop here, goes to about frame 33 or so. And since we're going to 140, we can go ahead and add about, let's say, 107. I think that would be a safe value. So I'll go ahead and put in 107 into the after field. For our sample range, I'll go ahead and set this to about the same, 107. Let's now go ahead and click Apply. All right, so take a look. Our last key ends up at about 143. There we go. So we've managed to stay within this range. Fantastic. And if you really wanted to, you can go to 140. If you really want the animation to stop here, well, how would we do that? Well, let's go ahead and adjust our view a bit. I'll hold down Control Alt and I'll start to drag until we've managed to get to 140. Now, all we need to do is go ahead and highlight the keys to remove out of that range and hit delete, and they're no longer there. You'll see that the cycle will continue. How do we remove that cycle? Well, again, with our 2 tracks selected, we can head over to Edit, Controller, Out of Range Types, and choose Constant. And we're back to where we were before. Fantastic. All right, sweet. So in this lesson, we've taken a look at a few ways of baking or collapsing animation. Essentially, what we have done here is we've converted movement back to keyframes, so we can go in and start to modify the end result, which is super cool.